My name's Kayleigh Frost. I'm the Head of Clinical Support at Health Assured, and I'm joined today by Victoria Harrison, and we're going to be talking about women's mental health. Morning, Victoria, you okay?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. Thanks for inviting me along to do this today.
Not a problem at all. So excited to get these podcasts, kick-started as well, and to showcase the talent of our counsellors. You're all absolutely amazing, and there's so much in terms of knowledge and insight into clinical support that you guys can provide. So let's hear it straight from the horse's mouth. So obviously we're going to talk about women's mental health today, but first you just want to tell me a little bit about your experience. What got you into counselling? Why are we here today? Why are you here sat here as a counsellor, Victoria?
I'm sat here today because I wanted to make a difference in the job that I do. And through my own life experiences of pain and things that had been modelled to me that I didn't kind of agree with, and I learned about as I got a bit more experience in the world, really doing the jobs that I did. My experience in counselling, I've been a counsellor for about 4 years now.
Yeah.
And I've worked from being a school counsellor in a primary school through to working in a homeless agency with ex-military males. Which
Very
is
varied.
Yeah. And then I have a private practice that's quite busy, and then the work that I do with Health Assured as well. It's very varied what I do.
I don't know how you have time to do anything else at all and look after your own mental health and physical health as well. You're a very, very busy lady. But your experience, I mean, yes, you've been a counsellor for 4 years, but the stuff that you've crammed into that is just phenomenal. Now we could sit and talk about all of it, and I'd love to, but we're going to speak about how you support women and talking about women's mental health in general. Now, when you're speaking with female clients or maybe service users that are accessing the immediate support line, what do you see are the biggest struggles at the moment that women are having?
The biggest struggles really tend to be them not being authentic to themselves. And there's this kind of label of, but I need to be strong as a woman. And it is, to be strong is great, and to have those strengths is great. Yeah. But underneath all of that, are we using that as an excuse to avoid looking after our own mental health?
Well, this is it. I'm saying collectively, us as women, we've been faced with so much in terms of prejudice and discrimination anyway throughout the years for centuries, and to get into a situation where we are empowered and we can, look to be successful, look to be strong women, we're frightened of showing any weaknesses. I mean, I am talking on behalf of all women, so sorry, everyone. But that's my personal feeling. And is that something that you personally can sometimes struggle with or might think about?
Yeah, no, definitely. For years, I was having this internal war inside of me of what I should do, what I would do, what I could do, all for others. And I had a lot of anger and frustration myself, and it was all because I wasn't being true. And I was looking for that positive regard externally. Yeah. So while keeping, a peace and pleasing everyone else externally, I was creating a chaos inside of me. And I see that quite a lot with clients and the ladies especially that I speak to, because we are known to internalise our mental health and our feelings. Yeah. And this is why ladies struggle a lot more with anxiety and depression in kind of the research that I've done, even as well as the experiences on the line that I do.
Just touching back on something that you said before, what do you mean by positive regard?
So positive regard is basically when we're kind of wanting, external validation. We want to make others happy, people pleasing.
I get that.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I feel you for that. Yeah, definitely. I think that is something personally probably struggled with at least all of my adult life, and probably every woman I know. I'm sure the same with yourself as well. It's something that we've been stuck with, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Is that what you work with your female clients then? How do you go about working with that?
Yeah, it is what I work with. Obviously, every client is a different a different person, and I always try and explain it to my clients, you're all a different flower. And every kind of flower, that is out there has different kinds of needs. So I do look at it on an individual basis. But, in working with that, it's about, where does that voice come from? Yeah. Who is it that's telling you that you should be, taking care of others' needs first, or that you're not worthy, or that you're not lovable to look after you? And, doing that kind of inner work there of who is that voice, we tend to, to find out, well, actually, it's not my voice.
What voices are it? I bet there's some common themes when you're working. So what kind of root causes are there? So
root causes is there's definite ones of our mother figures and what they kind of model to us. You could be grown up with a mum that's shown that, the needs of the partner, the father is always put before, hers, and the needs of the children, and we can grow up kind of, playing that out ourselves. There's even kind of, expectations at work, that a woman's voice isn't heard as loud as, a male voice. So there's lots of different root causes, but in kind of realising where that voice comes from, it opens up a doorway for us to explore further.
I feel like I'm in a counselling session right now. I feel like so at ease just chatting with you. How in terms of the general mental health struggles of women that you speak to either on the helpline or through private practice or whatever, what would you say like the 3 most common mental health struggles that they have?
There's anxiety and depression, definitely, renowned, in women's mental health. But, I'm seeing a lot more around hormones as well. A lot more women are kind of researching into what hormones are doing and playing a part in. Yeah. In kind of researching myself, it's given me a little bit of understanding on me. And the way that my kind of body works. And believe it or not, there's less known about women-only issues. And that's why it takes a lot longer for us to be diagnosed with things like endometriosis, PMDD. Basically, it's to do, with our hormones, that cycle that we go through, and how it impacts us so much. Our brain and our body are not 2 separate boxes. It's all joined into one. With the hormones that we have, on that cycle, the beginning of the cycle, we have estrogen. And when that estrogen is high, we actually have better verbal skills as women. Our memory is better. We are happier in our moods. But then when it comes to the progesterone, I think it's called, I always say that word wrong. When that kind of then increases, we then find ourselves in that low mood, struggling with depression. I don't know about yourself, Kayleigh, but I'm really clumsy.
Yeah. I've broken this wrist twice, just from walking in a straight line. Sober as well.
Wow. The clumsiness, or there'll be like tears. I've experienced myself tears. I'm thinking, why am I so upset about this? And there's actually the science behind it is those chemicals are taking over our brain.
You know what? Very recently, I've started tracking my period. I know it's a bit of an uncomfortable subject for some people to listen to, but I think it's amazing. And you know what? It's recently since I've started seeing a PT and going to training sessions, he knows more about my menstrual cycle than I do. So I started tracking it. And for me, I guess it's different in different women, isn't it? But the week before I'm due on, erratic, angry, someone looks at me the wrong way, puts a piece of paper down on my desk, and I want to launch myself over the desk at that person. And then 10 minutes later, also just want to sit in a corner and sob. And now actually tracking when that is due to happen. I've been doing it for about 3 or 4 months now. It kind of makes sense. And I know to start looking after myself, a little bit more during those 2 or 3 days of my menstrual cycle. So I guess that's something that a lot of women could look to start implementing. It's not difficult. I mean, I think I just do it on my phone, just track everything and I log my symptoms and stuff like that. But it's really interesting because then people are going to be able to work out when these chemical levels and these hormone levels are going to be spiking and put measures in place, like controls, I guess, to look after themselves. What kind of you know, so when people, I feel like we're just going to talk quite a lot about periods now, so apologies. But when, you know, if people are, as if women are struggling with those hormone spikes, what kind of suggestions would you have for them to maybe try out, put in place to look after those mood swings, I guess, which, you know, that's what they are, aren't they?
Yeah. You know, when those chemicals are at play and causing havoc in us, you know, every woman's body is different, so to speak, and some may not have, you know, the same effects as like what me and you have. Yeah. But I always think it's good to look at boosting that serotonin, that happy chemical. Yeah. So it could be completely different to all different women, but for me, it's things that make me smile. Yeah. So it could be a piece.
You're always smiling.
Well, I've got a lot to be happy about. Life is good. But a piece of music, you know, cooking for myself something nice, you know, booking myself a breakaway on my own.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So it's not necessarily you have to go and have a counselling session and go and speak to a counsellor at those times. That's not needed. You don't have to go to, it's not an extreme, but you don't have to go to that level of clinical input. It's just remembering what it is that makes you happy as a person.
Yeah, no, you know, some may find it really supportive talking to a counsellor at that time, but, you know, there's so much we can do to help ourselves, and it's about making, you know, that more, you know, more aware, that awareness out there of, you know, how do we, you know, help ourselves when we're feeling in these low moods. You know, there's been days when I've just stayed in bed, you know, and if that's what your body needs.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, scrolling on TikTok for 7.5 hours probably. Yeah.
But is that realistic as well, you know, and the expectations of women, you know, going to work, you know, I've been there myself, hot water bottles burning my stomach, you know, to make sure that I can be there and I can function, and that, you know, I'm as balanced as what I can be, but am I being true to myself in doing that at times?
It's really good. I mean, I think it's really important. I never really planned to move on to the subject of menstruation in this. It's definitely not here on my talking points. But I think when you're looking at women's mental health, it's really important to look at that, because we do have those extra hormones, and unfortunately those chemicals are often imbalanced and not on our side, and like you say, cause havoc, cause chaos, don't they? What about, you know, have you supported many women perhaps that are perimenopausal or menopausal as well? You know, what kind of things do you see when you're supporting those women?
And one that I was speaking to the other day, you know, and it was really sad. There's these unconscious biases that we have in society, in the workplaces for women, you know, and they're sharing things to me that, you know, it's like I'm being judged. It's like I'm having people waiting for me to make a mistake because of my ages. You know, my hormones are all over. You know, and you know, that struggle is real for women. Yeah. And it's like, is it being recognised? Are we doing enough? Is there enough support out there for this? And it's about, you know, holding, you know, the clients that are struggling in that moment and kind of giving them that psychoeducation that, you know, this is what your body's doing. These are the hormones at play here, you know, and, you know, how can you be kinder to yourself as you're going through this? What is it you feel that you need?
Talking about hormones and this unconscious bias, I think there are such negative connotations to that. You know, just the word hormonal in itself just has this kind of stigma and taboo, and thinking about, you know, our, like the older generations of women would never have even talked about that for fear of that being, she's crazy, she's hormonal, blah, blah, blah. So I make a conscious effort to be very open about the peaks in my menstrual cycle. I'm like, oh, I'm due on, and I make it very, very clear, you know, I want to kind of break down the stigmas that are attached to that and normalize talking about things that once really oppressed women for fear of that being linked to them being crazy or hysterical. And I still think there's a lot of stigma attached to that, because then people don't want to talk about how their hormones are impacting them, or just struggling about their mental health in general, because, as I mentioned at the beginning, we already face so much prejudice as women anyway. If you start throwing other kind of risk factors, you know, that might put things in jeopardy, like your successful career, a flourishing social life, and you know, thriving in life. You don't want to start talking about things that might take those kind of big milestones, you know, away from you. Do you get? I'm kind of waffling on now, but do you see many women, or speak to many kind of female clients that are really, you know, frightened about what opening up might do to them, like the implications of doing that?
Yeah, there's plenty that they'll ring us and reach out, and they'll say, I just don't know what to do. I feel so stuck, you know. And I'll kind of reflect to them. It's like you're putting on a Oscar-worthy performance here. I was like, well, you know, you must be exhausted in pretending that everything's okay when you're actually really struggling here. And it's about really giving them that empathy and kind of, like you say, normalising it and letting them know that, you know, they're not alone in this journey. You know, more women do need to speak up about, you know, their hormones and if they're struggling, and also
and just mental health conditions in general.
Yeah. Well, it's all interlinked, isn't it? So if our hormones and our mind are kind of, you know, up and down, it is going to impact that our mental health, and you know, it needs to be looked at. It needs to be addressed so women do feel comfortable in sharing it. You know, is there a way that we work around that in workplaces? You know, when you know these times are coming up, and you know, certain women struggle more than others as well with that.
What do you think? So, you know, I speak a lot of time. So I speak more to the employers, you know, in our line of work, I speak more to the employers, you speak more to the employees. So you're like on the ground, you know, with the guys, you know, and I'm there, you know, speaking to senior leadership. You have got the insight from speaking to people that may be struggling, talking about mental health, being open about mental health in the workplace. What suggestions would you have for their employers, or for the workplace in general? But I guess a culture shift is what's needed, isn't it?
Well, you know, is it about having those conversations with you know, if they were comfortable with it, with the females in the workplace, of you know, do you struggle, you know, with your hormones? Are you struggling, you know, with your cycles? You know, making, you know, themselves approachable and not a taboo subject, so to speak. You know, is there some way that their rota can be worked around, you know, their needs, so they are able to rest on those few days a month where it is more difficult? Because, you know, these rigid expectations that are put in us, you know, from society, introductory values from, you know, families and workplaces, of, you know, that you know, you're here to do the job, you know, this is what should be done, you know, you can't be a little bit slower, you know, they need to be more, what's the word now, more flexible, you know, rather than being so rigid.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's been needed for a number of years, hasn't it? I always say, you know, when I first started with Health Assured and kind of moved into the mental health space, everything was about breaking the stigma of mental health and talking about mental health. But actually that's shifted massively. A lot more people are comfortable talking about that, but it's then the person that they're talking to, or the people they're talking to, don't know how to deal with it. That's where the stigma is now, because people don't know how to respond for fear of offending someone or, you know, crossing the line or overstepping the boundaries and things. So I think that's where there really needs to be a focus now. And talking about women opening up, not just in the workplace, do you find, because I've certainly, you know, felt like this, where you compare yourself to your peers, your friends, your family, like, they've got their stuff together, you know. They're like, you know, doing great, and I can't tell them about these struggles that I've got. So that constant comparison, do you see that a lot? Is that common? Yeah,
and we drive ourselves insane. Our brain ends up becoming a bully within us. You know, and I can relate to it myself. You know, there's been times when I've struggled and I've been too embarrassed to say something. You know, I've got dyslexia and dyspraxia, and you know, to kind of say, oh, I'm struggling here. Now it's kind of, I've had to, you know, work through that uncomfortable feelings of, you know, well, what if they do judge me? What if they do think I'm no good? What if I may be, you know, I'm frowned upon in the job that I do because of these struggles that I do have? And, you know, I've had to be brave. You know, I've had to have that courage, because if I don't push myself out into that uncomfortable zone, you know, I'm never going to grow. You know, even doing this podcast today, I've been like, oh, I feel really anxious doing this. But I've had to push myself because as a counsellor, we expect our clients to be able to push themselves, go into that uncomfortable zone, you know, in order to kind of work with their fears, you know, so we need to do that as well as counsellors.
You should be really proud that you've come to do this, by the way. I'm really proud of you, and I'm really happy that we're getting to spend this time together. I bet I might, like, after this, though, you'll just walk out and decompress. Like oh my, you've been probably building this up all week.
No, thank you.
But you know, you're absolutely right. I think, I think, you know, when it comes to speaking to other people, I think what's really important to remember is that the likelihood is that they're probably thinking or have thought the same thing, like, oh, sugar, I can't tell Victoria this. I can't let her know that I'm struggling because she looks like she's got her life together. Whereas you're there on the other side going, oh God, I can't tell Kayleigh this because she's got her life together. What she's going to think of me. So I think we just need to start talking about it.
Yeah.
And no, we don't mean after a couple of drinks in the bathroom toilet crying to one another about it, which is, I mean, I've been there as well. I'm sure you have.
Yeah.
But having very healthy conversations, you know, going for a cup of tea together or something, going for lunch and opening up, or just like texting your loved one, your friends, and I just need to have a chat. Like, I need to sound off to someone, you know, I'm not feeling too great. I think we need to normalize those kind of conversations and really, like, you know, between friends and family, just making that a bit of a normal conversation.
Yeah. It's about that congruence and being real.
What's congruence?
So congruence is just being real and not holding back who you know, who we are or what's going on for us. And you know, I work very much in that way with the women that I work with, because you know, through, you know, like you were sharing before, women think, I've not got everything together, I maybe judged her. But you know, in being real, we're actually saying, do you know what? I can relate to that. You know, I've been there. It may not be exactly the same, the experience, but, you know, I've had similar thoughts to that. And in us being vulnerable to other women, what we are doing is we are empowering them. Yes.
This perfect conversation with it just being International Women's Day. On that, did you celebrate it at all? Did you do anything for it?
What did I do? In fact, I've brought something with me. I've got a quote that I wanted to read that I found on International Women's Day. Should I grab it?
Yeah.
Let me just
You love a quote.
I do love a quote. So each day I spend some time reading poems or quotes, and I find this gets me to really reflect on, you know, my life, my experiences, and I share in my private practice. I have a page I share on there, and a lot of other women can relate to it. And again, it's making that connection that you're not in this alone, and someone else understands you.
You're so sweet.
Right, let me just find
You are prepared. Look at it. Is this like a book full of quotes?
Well, these are on my cue cards. I thought I might need them, but we've just kind of
we've gone for it, haven't we? I love it.
Right, okay.
I would have loved it if this was a book of quotes. Quotes by Victoria Harrison.
Can you imagine? So this is the quote that I read on International Women's Day. But even reading it, there's this unconscious bias of he begins. So I'll read it to you. So although the organismic self is present at the birth of a baby, so that's who we are, who we really are. We don't come into this world feeling anxious or depressed. You know, it's our experiences of life, and think of yourself as like an onion, and that core of that onion is who you were born into this world. And all those layers of that onion are all your experiences, those values, those morals from family, friends, workplaces. And sometimes we need to strip some of those layers off and get back to that core.
Like Shrek.
Maybe that's where I've got it from. So the expression of positive regard, which I mentioned earlier, so that need to kind of wanting approval from everybody else, wanting to please them, towards him by someone significant to him becomes more important to him than his own organismic valuing process, and he begins to seek positive regard from others at the expense of any other experience. You know, how many of us can relate to that?
Although you're very right about the him and he.
In
the unconscious bias is just everywhere.
and you know, until we kind of think, oh, actually, it's there right in front of us. He, him. You know, and how many times have we, you know, put our mental health a risk to pleasing somebody else.
Yeah, probably more than once in my personal experience, and I'm sure it's the same with yourself. And you know what's really quite not sad, but the reality of it is it's gonna I think always be like that. I don't think we're gonna fully be able to eradicate that, but there are so many ways and so many things that people can be doing to minimize, like make that less of an issue. I feel like we've covered quite a lot of ground here. I mean, is there anything that you think that would be really pertinent to kind of bring to light or discuss that we haven't already discussed at all? I mean, I've pretty much gone through, the kind of things that I wanted to, and more, and and the rest. Have we missed anything that you think would be really, for everyone that's listening, that has access to support, that maybe doesn't know to use it, maybe needs that little bit of a push? Any final kind of thoughts on your side, Victoria? That's what I was trying to, in a roundabout way, that's what I was trying to say.
To summarise really what we've been speaking about is don't be afraid to speak out, to a counsellor if you do need that. We won't judge, we will give you that safe place. And just because we're counsellors doesn't mean we've got it all together, because we're human as well. And just
what?
Can you? And one thing that always sticks with me is, it's an ongoing process. We call it self-actualization, and it's a process that we're going through every day. And I even have to do these check-ins with myself. It's, we're never going to be perfect, because, when we look at a landscape, do we think, oh, well, there's nothing, it's not perfect, is it? But we see it as perfect. So it's trying to look at ourselves as that landscape with that sunset. Do we say, oh, actually, that sunset, if it was a bit more orange and a bit more over to the left, it would look more beautiful. It's about accepting, who we are, those quirks. And, through me accepting my own quirks, I've become so much happier. I'm not heavy, I'm not embarrassed about if I say a word wrong, or if something, an old saying or quote said back to front because of my dyslexia. I accept it now, and most people, they laugh with me, and I laugh at myself. Now I can do that.
I want to do snaps for you, Victoria. That was awesome. Well, thank you so much.
It's okay.
I think this is a nice natural end to the podcast today.
It definitely is.
Thank you so much for joining me, and just thank you for doing what you do. You're fabulous.
And so are you.
Oh,
thank you for having me.
Thank you. Cheers.